Hello and welcome to Backyard Catch. This is Nick Roby. Thanks for joining me. So excited to be coming to y'all. This episode will be publishing uh, on the 24th of November, Black Friday. So I hope you've been having a great holiday, Thanksgiving with your family and loved ones, and getting some good R&R, or just at least get a little bit of a break with some people that you really care about. So hope this reaches you well. Super excited to talk with y'all about some college football. It's been a full week over here. So, we look up and here we go. We got college football rivalry weekend. So a lot of teams are playing with their big rivals or big, implications on the line. We've got college, conferences, title games or matchups are being decided. We've got playoff implications. We've got bragging rights throughout the year. I mean, for some of these teams, it's just they just want this over the rival. They want to be the spoiler for their rival getting opportunities like that. You want to be just the bragging rights. It's a massive weekend, and there's a lot to talk about. So I don't want to delay it, too much. Let's jump into it. So as of this recording, too, Ole Miss has already taken care of business against Mississippi State, 17-7. So I did have in the contest we were playing, Ole Miss was 11 and a half favorite. So just barely missed on that one in a defensive battle. So it was good for Ole Miss. They got to 10 wins. It's interesting. I mean, they lost who they were supposed to lose to, and they beat other teams. So it is, it's still a good year. I mean, 10 wins is hard to come by, which is impressive, but they didn't have the margin that they thought I would. I thought they were better on both sides of Mississippi State, but Mississippi State hung around as a defensive battle, which was kind of surprising to me. But Mississippi State comes out on top or Mississippi comes out on top 17-7 in the Egg Bowl. So, and Ole Miss gets 10 wins. So, congrats to them. I want to also talk about two of the Friday night matchup before we get into the Saturday ones. Oregon State, the Beavers, who are number 16 in the country, travel to Oregon, who's number 6. Oregon is a 14-point favorite. This is 8:30 on Fox. So, this is a big one, battle for the state of Oregon. This is interesting because Oregon has just the one loss to Washington. So if all things play out like they should, or as maybe on paper, then they would want a rematch with Washington. And you could argue that they should be the favorite. I would probably have them being the favorite if that matchup were to come for spread wise. In Oregon State, just coming off of a tough game with Washington, it's like, oh, fun, you get to go to a rival who is arguably playing even better, on the road. It's a 14-point game, and to me, what this comes down to is I just think the Oregon offense is just clicking on all cylinders right now, and they're on a mission really to really prove a point and want that opportunity to beat Washington and give themselves a shot, even at a playoff if things go certain ways. But I think they'll be up for this game. They're not looking past Oregon State. Oregon State, they've done a good job with DJ Uyunglele. They've got a good defense. They've been playing really well, and they gave Washington a tough battle at home. But to come after that, to go on the road to Eugene, which is a really tough place to play, I would not want to go play there. And Oregon is just firing on all cylinders offensively. It's a 14-point spread in the contest. I'm taking Oregon minus 14. I just think their offense is too much, and DJU's been doing a good job. That's a lot on his shoulders to go against a team with Oregon who you could argue, is better offensively than they are. And that's a big task for their defense to keep it within that. So I think I could see Oregon like pulling away late into like a 17, 20 point kind of victory, but I'm taking Oregon minus the 14. So, but of course, the big one on Saturday, it's on big noon kickoff. It's the game. Number 2, Ohio State going to number 3, Michigan. Michigan is the 3-point favorite. It's a noon kickoff on Fox. All eyes will be on this one. Of course, Jim Harbaugh is not going to be on the sidelines. He's going to be a part of the team still, but he's finishing up the 3 game of his second suspension of the year. So he now will have missed, not coached for half the games this season. Michigan is a 4-point favorite. So if it was on a neutral field, it'd be like basically a pick'em game. The 4 points is given for Michigan at home. And this one's really interesting because last week, Michigan played a closer game than I was expecting with Maryland. They had the Penn State game, which I thought they were in control of. And then, of course, they go on the road to Maryland, which is not the easiest place to play, especially when you have them sandwiched between them and Ohio State, and you've got all this other stuff going on with all the sign stealing investigation that's going on, the alleged sign stealing. So, but they took care of business, but Maryland definitely hung around, and for Ohio State, they've got this game circled. So, this is crazy because this game is basically a play-in game for the playoff, because the winner of this game, they'll be undefeated playing Iowa, probably winning the Big Ten title. They'll be an undefeated champion, probably the number 2 seed. If Georgia wins out, then they would be the 1 seed more than likely, and then the winner of this game would be number 2, 1 or 2 in the country. The losers of this game, though, you could argue with there's so many teams that are so comparable with each other, and there's not a whole lot of differentiators, and we haven't had this like chaos type of a weekend where teams have picked up losses. You'll be a 1-loss team, but you're no division titles. You didn't even play in the conference title game, and you're facing other conference champions who maybe 1 loss. You're probably not in there. So it's really interesting to think about. So Michigan could be trying to go for a third conference championship in a row. Ohio State's trying to, break the streak, and if you win on the road in Michigan, it's supposed to be, kind of just Michigan weather in November. So it's going to be one of those types of games. Be really interesting to me. So it's interesting. It would be interesting to see how Michigan goes against Marvin Harrison Jr. and that offense for Ohio State. How well can Henderson run the ball for them? And then for Michigan, JJ McCarthy, they can run the ball with Corum and stuff and Edwards, but interesting for me, I want to see how McCarthy plays and how this defense will probably try to take away that. And then McCarthy, I think, will have to, if Michigan wins this game, he will have had to make some plays through the air. And I think Michigan hasn't really been giving him a lot of opportunities. And then the question becomes, in this kind of game, you have to put it all out there. I think that's what kind of happened to Penn State, is they were trying to protect their young quarterback, and so you're like, okay, like, you're doing a bigger game, like, what are we going to see? And it ended up being that he needs still more time, which is totally fine, and to be expected for a sophomore. But for McCarthy, it's like he hasn't thrown the ball that much recently. And then when he did last week, he threw a really bad interception in the red zone, and he can't do that against Ohio State. So to me, this comes down to, I think there's so much chaos going on in Michigan, and they've been able to look past it. But at some point, you can reach a kind of breaking point with that. And you don't have Harbaugh on the sidelines. And not that they haven't been doing a bad job, but we're talking like a different level of game. And, Ohio State's very invested when it comes to this stuff, like with the sign stealing stuff, I'm sure. And they're very motivated. They've lost 2 years in a row. They want to get to where they're going to. I just think they have the best player on the field, and they're very motivated already. And then you've got all this other stuff going on. And Michigan, passing wise, that they can't just run the ball like they've been doing against Ohio State. You can't just run it the whole time, because Ohio State can hit some big plays if you give it to them, especially, what Maryland was able to do. So I know it's on the road. So I'm taking Ohio State to cover, and I think Ohio State's going to do it. I think it's a close game. I really like, it's going to be one of those, like, rough and tumble kind of games, but I think Ohio State's just got a little bit too much offensively, and I think it's just too much going on for Michigan, and what happens if Ohio State goes up early and the crowd, kind of can take the crowd out of it a little bit. Like, they're not, showing before these past couple of years, like, they're aware of how to win up there. It's not, they're very aware of each other as a program, and Ohio State's definitely a program that, if you've beaten them, I mean, Clemson fans have known this too, like, they will be very aware, and this game has been circled. It always is every year, but adding all these other motivating factors, I just think it's too much that leans towards Ohio State, which should be a good game. But I'm taking Ohio State to cover and win on the road and punch their ticket to Indianapolis. But other games going on this weekend, we've got Kentucky at number 10, Louisville. Louisville's a 7-point favorite at home on ABC. This one, to me, is just Louisville. They've already punched their ticket to the ACC title game. They'll be playing Florida State. I think Louisville's they're just too dominant at home. Kentucky's been having a hard time passing the game. I think Plummer and this offense, they're just too dynamic for this Kentucky team. I think Louisville covers, and I think they cover pretty easily on that one. The Iron Bowl, Alabama, 14.5 point favorite at Auburn. Alabama number 8 in the country. They're already going to the SEC title game, but of course they got the rival with Auburn. This is a 3:30 kick on CBS. Auburn's licking their wounds after winning an upset from New Mexico State at home, 31-10. To me, this goes one of two ways. This is either like some Auburn home magic that happens, kind of with they didn't beat Georgia earlier, but we saw that them get up for a game that we weren't really sure how they were going to respond in that, or so that they have that going for them, or or Alabama just goes out early and they're in control the whole game. And I just think Alabama's offense is clicking too much, and Auburn just has been having a hard time passing the ball, and I think it's just really hard for you to be one-dimensional against some of these bigger teams, especially with the way Alabama's been playing. I think, and Nick Saban, like he'll have those guys ready. They're not going to be surprised about going down there. I mean, they barely won a couple of years ago down there. I just think they're just too dynamic. Jalen Miller is too much with his legs too. So I have Alabama covering the 14.5. Number 5, Florida State, 6.5 point favorite at Florida, 7 p.m. on ESPN. This one's interesting because both quarterbacks, unfortunately, are out with injury. Jordan Travis had that really bad injury. It was really sad to see. And then Florida's having to go to their backup quarterback too. Florida's a very much like, what team are you going to get type of team. They're playing better as of late and at home. Florida State is the number 1 team. They're undefeated in the ACC, and they're undefeated. They're already playing the title game against Louisville. They're playing the backup. They're able to bounce back and play well. I could see this being this could be kind of an interesting, kind of a weird game, but I think Florida State gets it done because they've got the motive in playing for Jordan Travis. It's a rival game on the road. This will be close, but I think Florida State pulls it out late. They've just got too many options on offense, and I think Florida might be too one-dimensional, with ETN and those guys in the running game. I think Florida State will be able to do it, but this one will be like a 10-point kind of a game. But I have Florida State covering. Washington State at number 4, Washington. Washington is a 16.5 point favorite at home. This is a 4 p.m. game on Fox. So Washington's trying to stay undefeated, and as they get ready for probably the Pac-12 title game. And Washington State is in a rival game, and they're trying to be spoilers and just kind of mess with Washington, especially in the last year of the Pac-12. I mean, to me, this comes down to, when it comes to spreads, Washington is a good team this year for sure. Like they're they deserve to be a top 5 team. Their wins have been closer. They've been around that 10-point kind of margin, and like they have a really good offense, but their defense can give up some points and give up some yards. And so for me, it just comes down to that. Washington State can have a good passing offense. And I think too, sometimes Washington can be a little bit turnover prone. Interesting to see if this running game can keep going, but 16.5 is just too much for me. I think this could be a 2-touchdown game, maybe a 10-point game, probably. So I have Washington State covering on the road, but Washington winning and being undefeated going into the Pac-12 title game. And I'm predicting against Oregon. Georgia is a 23-point favorite at Georgia Tech. The battle for the state of Georgia, number 1 Georgia, 7:30 on ABC. This one's interesting because it's just a really big margin in a rival game on the road. Georgia's already, going to the SEC title game. But 23 points is it's a lot, man. But, however, Georgia's been starting to click on all cylinders. The way they played against Ole Miss, last week was really impressive to me. And this team is going to be ready to go. I think too that from what Clemson was able to do with Georgia Tech is that they've showed that they can be turnover prone. And I just, I've been going against Georgia for a lot of the year, expecting them to not quite reach that level, or their offense hasn't been quite as good, or Carson Beck to maybe have like a kind of a so-so type of a game, and they just haven't had that yet. So they got Brock Bowers. It's just too much for me. I think they're in control of this game, and I have them covering, which is a lot, but I have a hard time with the 23 even for Georgia Tech at home. So I'm going to have Georgia covering the 23. UNC a 2-point favorite on the road at number 22 NC State in this Tar Heel State rivalry game. It's 8 p.m. on ACC Network. This one's really interesting because you have Brandon Armstrong is starting to play a little better. UNC is trying to come back after a tough loss at Clemson, where they had opportunities but they didn't capitalize, and they ended up losing by a couple scores. And UNC is the favorite on the road, but NC State is the right team. UNC, I mean, you start hearing little rumbles or seeing some rumbles, on the old Twitter. Maybe some players will enter the portal, or just you just kind of wonder what they're kind of thinking of when they don't have the goal of going to the ACC title game anymore, and they're trying to finish the season well. But for NC State, I mean, this is like this rivalry game is bigger for NC State than it is North Carolina, because North Carolina's big rival is Duke, especially in basketball, and everyone knows that. But for NC State, this is like their big rival game. And NC State's had North Carolina's number recently, and it's at home. NC State's a tough place to play at home. They've got a good defense. And you're giving me 2 points with the home team. I don't know how many playmakers they have, but Concepcion's a good receiver, the freshman for NC State. I just don't know the psyche of North Carolina right now, and I just know how big this is for NC State. Give me NC State at home with the win. I think they really want this one. And then the big one that I'll of course be paying attention to, and a lot of others, is number 24 Clemson. We have them as a 7-point favorite at South Carolina for the Battle of the Palmetto State, 7:30 on SEC Network. This one's very interesting because Clemson is trying to get to 8 wins, and South Carolina is trying to get to be bowl eligible and guarantee themselves a bowl game. But South Carolina, they got the win last year in Death Valley, 31-30, and knocked any chance out that Clemson had at a playoff. This one's very interesting. I think, to me, the big one for this is turnovers. If Clemson can do what they've been doing offensively at home and take care of the ball too, I think it's too much for South Carolina. South Carolina they've got a good offense when it's clicking, but it's too one-dimensional against a good defense like Clemson's. And I think you can block out Leggett and make someone else beat you, especially in the running game too. I just think it's too much. The thing is that Willie Bryce that's a very tough environment especially when it's at home and when it's a night game at home. So that's very tough. That's something big to watch for. So this one should be a good game, but I've got Clemson covering. I think it's just too much. I think it's too much on the road. This team is very focused. But if you want to hear more of that kind of breakdown, we have a new episode out as well, previewing that game on the Hill and Valley, which is a part of our podcast network. But that's it for us. And so just want to go through those picks again. We got Oregon minus the 14, Ohio State plus 4. We've got Louisville minus 7. We've got Alabama minus the 14.5. Florida State, the minus 6. Washington State plus 16.5. Georgia covering the 23. NC State plus 2 at home with the win, and Clemson covering the 7 on the road. So thanks so much for listening, guys. Hope you enjoy a great weekend of college football, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks.